Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Heneriko Kulembeka from TARI in Tanzania. I'll be updating you on CBSD cassava resistance breeding efforts done by TARI. I will be presenting on behalf of the team from TARI. My outline of the talk will be on feed evaluation of CBSD resistance clones from CRT. Actually, we're validating their resistance to CBSD. So I'll be talking about evaluation of F1s generated from the CRT and the TZ cultivars resistant to CMD. But I will also be talking on generation of 4,050 F1s botanical seeds, which were generated from the crosses among CBSD, CBSD tolerant and the resistant clones. But I will also be sharing with you the updates on importation of CBSD resistant clones from DSCMZ. For feed validation of CBSD resistant clones from CRT, we wanted to know the 5 clones which were introduced from CRT on their reaction to CBSD, because it was believed that they are immune. So we wanted to see how they behave in the field in terms of CBSD resistance. So we evaluated them in 3 CBSD hospital areas of Tanzania, northwestern part of Tanzania, around Lake Victoria, but they are evaluated in a randomized complete plot with 3 replication, and in each plot we planted 42 plants per plot. So in terms of harvesting, these are the images of the roots of these clones. So could it be, you see Cuba 40, Pala 226, Peru 556, Colombia 2182, as well as Ecuador 41. This is how we know the roots images appear. So we did root necrosis, and these are the results, and these are the imaging showing the root necrosis of these clones. So you could see Peru 226, Peru 556, as well as Colombia 2182, they were clean, no root necrosis. But Ecuador 41 and the Cuba 40, they were highly infected with the CBSD, and you see root necrosis up to score of class 5. So which means we remained with we have only three clones which were clean from CBSD. So in terms of field results of these clones, in terms of their reaction to CBSD, these are the results. So in terms of foliar reaction to CBSD, so could you see it was only our our local varieties, which we included as susceptible variety, which we are showing foliar infection. And this was at 6 months at Bunda. In terms of CBSD at the same CBSD root necrosis at the same site, you see that Colombia 2142, as well as Ecuador 41, as well as Pala 226 were clean, but only Cuba 40 were highly susceptible now to CBSD root necrosis. But we all know, in terms of CMD, we all know that most of the all the CRT clones were susceptible to CMD. So you see they are having a score of up to 4. But in terms of yield, you see PEL 226 as well as Colombia 2182 showing a harvest index of 0.4, but this was lower than in Mkumba, which we are showing 0.6 of harvest index. So Mkumba were recording higher yield than the CEAT clones. At Ukelewe, again, Cuba Forte were highly susceptible to CBSD infection on the shoot. But in terms of CBSD, root necrosis, 12 months after planting, you see Cuba Forte again having no score of class 5. But also Peru 226 were showing a score of up to a score of class 2 for some of the plants. So the trend for CMD is the same as Atibunda. But for yield, again, you see Colombia 2182, where at this site we're having more than 0.6 of harvest index. So was Ecuador 41. We are having a appreciably high yield, as well as Ecuador PAL 226. The results at Ukiriguru show almost more or less the same trend for CBSD foliar infection, but for CBSD, we are saying the same trend. Cuba Forte showing a score of 5, highly infected, but also again PAL 226 showing almost a score of 2 for root necrosis. The trend for CMD was the same. We also did the CBSD detection and the quantification. We sent our samples to IITA, and we sent samples of leaf, stem, and the root. The idea was to see whether CBSV viruses are found in our tested clones or not. And we also did some quantification. The measurement was done by the RT-PCR. And these are the results. So the laboratory results show that on roots shows that 38.6% of the samples had the CBSV alone, and 7.6% had a mixed infection of CBSV as well as the UCBSV. But we could not find any sample which was singly infected with the UCBSV. We don't have the reason, probably our colleagues at CEAT at DSMZ can help us to explain why we are not getting any sample with the UCBSV. We don't know whether these clones are resistant to UCBSV or other reasons. We are there to get the help from our colleagues in DCMZ. So once we got the clones which are resistant or tolerant to CBSD among the CEAT clones, though we found the 3 which we use now to close with your CMD resistant cultivars from Tanzania. And we generated some F1s which now we put under evaluation. So here we are sharing the results of 20 families, which each of the families we planted more than 30 F1 individuals, and we use augmented design with the 4 checks, and the plot size was only 5 plants per plot, and we tested in 2 areas, Ukiriguru and the Chambezi. So the image on the screen shows how the materials appear. They are 3 months old in the 2 sites. So we are continuing with the collection and the scoring of the CBSD as well as the CMD. But the results at 3 months show that most of the F1s are still showing a score of class 1. They are not yet infected with any of the CBSVs. They are still clean, except kiloba, which is showing, this kiloba was used as a check, is showing some CBS infection in the leaf. But for CGM, okay, there is a different reaction to the materials, but most of the F1s are having a score of class 3. At Ukiriguru, again, Kibandameno is our Czech variety is showing some CBSD infection in the leaf, as well as Wakitangaza, which are susceptible to CBSD. And our F1s are still showing some resistance. So in terms of, we also generated some 4,050, as I said before, and we also put them in the field. And these are the materials generated, and this is a combination of the crosses we used, and the number of seeds we generated are 4,004. The idea was to cross between CRT materials, with our tolerant or resistant materials, from Tanzania. And these are the number of seeds we generated, and on the screen, the family and the number of seeds collected, and which totals 4,050 botanical seeds. But you also, this month we imported some clones from DSMZ. We just received them in this June, and we imported 2 classes of clones. So we have 4 clones which are Tanzanian. We send them for testing for viruses, but also for virus cleaning. But we also received some materials from DSMs which were not from CIAT. Some of them are crosses of the resistant parents from CIAT. So we received a total of 10 breeding lines. And this is how they appear. So we imported them in terms of tested cuttings as well as tissue culture. So we have already planted them in the screen house. They are still under humidity chambers. So we are still winning them. This is how they appear in the humidity chamber. And these are the tested cuttings in the screen house at TARI Ukiriguru. So I thank you for your attention.